Lewis Hamilton signs with Red Bull and dumps Ferrari ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix. Stay until the end to find out when it will be made official before anyone else. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. The Formula One world has been shaken to its core by news so monumental that it has overshadowed every other headline in the sport. Lewis Hamilton, the seven-time world champion, has signed a deal with Red Bull Racing. What was once unthinkable has become reality, and the ramifications of this move are so vast that the entire balance of power in the sport has been altered overnight. After weeks of rumors circling the paddock, suggestions of secret meetings, and speculation about Hamilton's disenchantment with both Ferrari and Mercedes, the bombshell has finally dropped. He will be joining forces with Max Verstappen, creating a partnership that is already being described as the most explosive, volatile, and potentially dominant driver pairing Formula One has ever seen. What makes this twist even more staggering is the financial choreography that paved the way. Red Bull, long considered unmovable in its commitment to Verstappen as the centerpiece of its empire, had recently undergone internal upheaval following the dramatic dismissal of Christian Horner. That scandal had left the team at a crossroads, with both reputational damage and a sudden restructuring of its budget. The departure of Horner and the unraveling of the executive contracts tied to him freed up tens of millions in annual commitments, funds that had previously been locked away in bonuses, long-term financial obligations, and leadership packages. The sudden availability of this capital created a war chest that could be redirected with ruthless efficiency toward a driver signing of historic proportions. Once the Horner saga ended, Red Bull's leadership moved with lightning speed. Determined to demonstrate that the team was not weakened but stronger than ever, they initiated contact with Hamilton's camp. Sources say the first outreach was discreet, an informal message passed through mutual intermediaries who had long-standing ties to both Hamilton's management and Red Bull's senior leadership. But what began quietly escalated almost immediately. Within days, Hamilton's advisors were flying to Salzburg for late-night sessions with Red Bull executives. In these meetings, discussions stretched into the early morning hours, covering not just financial terms but technical philosophies, team culture, and the broader vision of what Hamilton's arrival would mean for Red Bull's dynasty. For Hamilton, the offer came at exactly the right time. At Ferrari, he had grown increasingly frustrated by repeated failures to deliver on grand promises. A season of misjudged strategies, underwhelming car development, and internal politics had left him doubting whether Maranello was capable of providing the machinery to chase another world title. Meanwhile, Mercedes, his former kingdom, was navigating a period of uncertainty, struggling to recapture the dominance of its hybrid-era peak. Hamilton, acutely aware that the window for adding to his championship tally was closing, saw Red Bull not just as a lifeline but as the clearest, sharpest opportunity to cement his legacy beyond dispute. The contract that emerged from those marathon negotiations is staggering in both scope and symbolism. At its core, Hamilton secured one of the largest base salaries ever seen on the grid, a figure that insiders suggest surpasses even the peak earnings of his Mercedes era. But what makes the deal unique are the layered bonuses and performance incentives. Victories, podiums, pole positions, and championship standings are all tied to escalating financial rewards, meaning that should Hamilton and Verstappen push Red Bull to new heights, Hamilton's earnings could climb to unprecedented levels. More than just money, however, Hamilton's influence within the deal is extraordinary. The contract grants him input into technical discussions, a degree of authority over development priorities, and a formal seat at the table in shaping the long-term trajectory of the team's projects. For a driver who has often clashed with management over strategic decisions, this represents a radical shift. Hamilton will not merely drive the car, he will help design the future of Red Bull racing. The fallout across the sport has been immediate and seismic. Ferrari has been left stunned, their carefully crafted narrative of Hamilton as the man to restore their glory shattered before it ever truly took root. Mercedes, already facing internal struggles, must now watch their former champion align with the very team that has tormented them since the end of their dominance. Rival teams are privately alarmed, with several insiders admitting that a Hamilton-Verstappen lineup has the potential to dominate the grid in ways unseen even during Mercedes' peak years. The political ripples are also enormous, as Formula One's power brokers scramble to interpret what this means for commercial deals, fan engagement, and the sport's competitive balance. For Verstappen, the arrival of Hamilton introduces a dynamic that is as fascinating as it is dangerous. The Dutchman has long enjoyed undisputed status as Red Bull's focal point, the undisputed number one. Now he will share the garage with a man who defined an era before him, the driver many still call the greatest of all time. Tension seems inevitable, as two of the fiercest competitors in the history of the sport are forced to coexist under one roof, chasing the same trophies, fighting for the same team's resources, and driven by legacies that refuse to bend. The question is not just whether Red Bull can handle them, but whether the sport itself is ready for the sheer intensity this rivalry will ignite. Fans are already divided into camps. Social media has exploded with debates. Some see Hamilton's move as a masterstroke of ambition, proof that he refuses to settle for decline and will stop at nothing to win again. Others accuse him of betrayal, of abandoning Ferrari too soon, of chasing money and influence rather than loyalty. Yet regardless of perspective, no one denies that this move has captured global attention in a way few Formula One stories ever do. The sport thrives on drama, and this is the kind of drama that transcends racing. It is history unfolding in real time. For Hamilton, this is the ultimate gamble, the boldest decision of his career. To step into Verstappen's territory, to join the team that has defined the new era, and to demand not just a seat but a voice in its direction is a move only a driver of his stature could attempt. For Red Bull, it is a declaration of intent. Not content with dominance, they are doubling down on creating the most formidable lineup imaginable. And for Formula One, this saga is the perfect storm of ambition, rivalry, betrayal, and spectacle, a development so extraordinary that it will be remembered long after the engines of this season fall silent. The deeper truth, the one everyone whispers about behind closed doors in motorhomes and hospitality units, is not simply that Hamilton has joined Red Bull but what this means for the internal chemistry of a team that, for nearly a decade, has revolved entirely around Max Verstappen. Since his breakthrough, Verstappen has been the beating heart of the operation, the driver around whom every upgrade, every race plan, and every tactical decision was centered. He has enjoyed an authority bordering on absolute, his feedback treated as gospel, his presence commanding the attention of engineers, strategists, and even the hierarchy at Milton Keynes. His status was not questioned. He was the cornerstone, the symbol of Red Bull's identity. That entire structure has now been violently shaken by the arrival of Lewis Hamilton, a seven-time champion whose mere presence is enough to distort the gravitational pull of any team he enters. Insiders say the first meeting between Verstappen and Hamilton was nothing short of volcanic. Scheduled as a simple introductory session, a chance for pleasantries and for both drivers to set a professional tone, it spiraled quickly into open conflict. The tension in the room was described by one engineer as suffocating. Verstappen, accustomed to total dominance inside the team, reportedly wasted no time in making his position clear, declaring in a sharp tone that Red Bull was his team, his kingdom, and that Hamilton's arrival would not alter the hierarchy. Hamilton, who has navigated countless political battles over the course of his career, did not raise his voice, but his words cut deep. He calmly replied that no team belongs to any single driver, that the only true ownership lies in performance, results, and the collective work of the crew. Witnesses claim Verstappen's jaw tightened, his body language bristled with anger, and the atmosphere quickly became hostile enough that senior management stepped in to prevent a complete breakdown before the session ended. The aftermath of that confrontation has already spread like wildfire through the paddock. The mechanics, the strategists, the aerodynamicists, all are buzzing with speculation about how two of the most forceful personalities in the sport will coexist. Some argue that Red Bull has just constructed a powder keg, with two alpha drivers destined to clash not only wheel-to-wheel but in the subtler arenas of pit-stop sequencing, strategy calls, and political influence within the team. Every debrief, every technical briefing, and every development meeting is expected to be a battleground for dominance. Others, however, see the potential brilliance of this gamble. To them, Red Bull has engineered a situation where the most relentless competitor of the current generation will be forced to sharpen himself against the most decorated champion of the modern era. In this reading, the collision of egos could spark unprecedented performance, forcing both to push beyond their limits. What complicates the situation further is the reaction of the workforce inside Milton Keynes. For years, many of the engineers and designers have worked almost exclusively under Verstappen's influence, tailoring setups to his aggressive driving style, bending development curves to suit his demands. But Hamilton's arrival has electrified another faction, thrilled by the chance to collaborate with a driver whose technical feedback has been praised across multiple teams for its clarity and depth. Some veterans who once worked with Hamilton during joint simulator programs speak of his almost obsessive ability to dissect car behavior, to sense nuances in balance that others overlook. The factory now finds itself divided, loyalties split, allegiances questioned, friendships tested. Even the smallest details have become points of speculation. Who will get priority in the garage when the team must decide between conflicting setup directions? Whose feedback will the aerodynamics department trust more when designing the next wave of upgrades? Who will the strategists favor in those split-second decisions on pit wall when one car has to be serviced first? Already, whispers circulate that Verstappen's core supporters in the garage are determined to protect his primacy, while another group is quietly excited about the intellectual challenge of aligning with Hamilton. The ripple effects extend far beyond the walls of Milton Keynes. Rivals up and down the paddock are watching with fascination, some convinced that Red Bull has destabilized itself fatally, others terrified at the idea of two generational talents pushing the same machinery to its absolute peak. In motorhomes from Silverstone to Suzuka, the conversation is the same. Can two titans share one kingdom? For the first time in years, Red Bull is not only the team to beat on track, it is the team everyone is watching off it, because the dynamics inside its own garage may end up being the greatest drama of all. Toto Wolff is said to be seething in a way few have ever witnessed before. For months, perhaps even longer, he had been carefully and quietly maneuvering behind the scenes, weaving together a delicate plan to engineer Lewis Hamilton's triumphant return to Mercedes. He had been willing to bend in areas where he rarely compromises, offering Hamilton not only a salary package tailored to his status as the most decorated driver in history, but also something Wolff almost never grants: deeper influence over car development, greater say in technical direction, and the kind of collaborative authority that only comes when trust has been built over a decade of dominance. Wolff's pitch was not just about money or machinery, it was about legacy. He envisioned Hamilton stepping back into silver to close the circle, to end his career where his greatest triumphs were born, to restore a dynasty together. For Wolff, it was about rewriting history with one final chapter of glory. To watch all of that evaporate in an instant as Hamilton aligned himself with Red Bull, the very team that dismantled Mercedes' supremacy, is, insiders say, nothing short of devastating for him. The anger has reportedly spilled out in private conversations, where Wolff has gone as far as describing Hamilton's choice as a betrayal of legacy, words laced with both sorrow and fury. To him, this is not simply a driver choosing another team. This is the dismantling of a bond that built an empire of championships. Red Bull, the sworn enemy during Mercedes' years of domination, the team that snatched their crown and reshaped the competitive landscape, has now become Hamilton's chosen refuge. For Wolff, the symbolism is unbearable. It is the sight of his greatest ally joining forces with his fiercest rival, the driver who once elevated Mercedes to heights unimaginable, now preparing to do the same for the team that ended their reign. Those close to Wolff insist that while he is already pivoting Mercedes toward a new future, the wound will linger. Plans are being recalibrated aggressively. The recruitment of young, hungry talent, the reshaping of technical leadership, and a sharper focus on building a car philosophy not dependent on any one driver. He is determined to transform Mercedes into a machine of collective strength rather than a dynasty built around a single figure. Yet even as he takes those steps, there is a recognition that the sting of Hamilton's departure will haunt him. The trust, the shared victories, the nights spent in celebration and the days endured in defeat, all of it feels undone by a single signature on a Red Bull contract. Friends within the paddock whisper that Wolff may never forgive what he sees as the ultimate personal and professional betrayal. If Wolff is furious, Ferrari is devastated. The sense of betrayal in Maranello is said to be almost unbearable. Hamilton arrived as the chosen one, the man who would restore the Scuderia to its former glory, the figure who promised to spearhead a revival of the prancing horse and bring championships back to Italy. His arrival was heralded as a new dawn, a marriage of the sport's most successful driver with its most storied team. Yet in record time, that promise has dissolved into disillusionment. Hamilton's decision to abandon the Red Project before even completing his full tenure has left Ferrari's leadership scrambling to explain themselves to the Tifosi, a fanbase that demands loyalty and worships tradition above all else. Within Ferrari's corridors of power, John Elkann and Fred Vasseur are reportedly livid, their fury matching Wolff's in intensity but fueled by humiliation rather than heartbreak. Elkann has allegedly described Hamilton's move as a stain on Ferrari's honor, while Vasseur, who personally championed the Hamilton signing, is left facing questions about his judgment and leadership. To see the most decorated driver in Formula One history walk away so abruptly, and worse still, to walk directly into the arms of their fiercest competitor, is a scenario they never anticipated. The Italian media has wasted no time turning the situation into a firestorm. Headlines scream betrayal, opinion columns label Hamilton's decision an insult to the prancing horse, and television pundits question whether Ferrari's allure has permanently faded. The backlash from fans is already building into a wave of anger and despair. For the tifosi, who bleed red and live every race as if it is life or death, Hamilton's departure is not just a personal choice, it is a rejection of Ferrari's soul. The betrayal cuts deep, for it was Ferrari that believed they were offering him immortality in the colors of the most legendary team in history. On the track, the timing could not be worse. Ferrari has been grappling with inconsistency, flashes of competitiveness offset by costly errors and technical shortcomings. The dream was that Hamilton's arrival would galvanize the team, bringing both his extraordinary talent and his unmatched experience to elevate every corner of the operation. Instead, what was once a vision of rebirth has collapsed into chaos. Losing Hamilton to Red Bull, at a moment when Ferrari is already under pressure to deliver results, is nothing short of catastrophic. The team now faces the dual challenge of repairing internal morale, while confronting the fury of a fanbase that feels abandoned. What was meant to be a renaissance has become a nightmare. Ferrari is left with questions it cannot easily answer. How did the most accomplished driver in Formula One history come to see Red Bull, their greatest rival, as a better home than Maranello? What does this say about the state of Ferrari's project, its leadership, and its ability to inspire loyalty? In the end, both Mercedes and Ferrari are reeling, not just from losing Hamilton, but from the fact that he chose Red Bull, the team that has become the standard of excellence and the symbol of their decline. For Wolff, it is personal. For Ferrari, it is existential. And for Hamilton, it is the boldest, most shocking move of his career, one that ensures the next chapter of Formula One will be dominated not only by battles on track but by the aftershocks of this decision. Inside the Red Bull factory, the atmosphere has transformed into something closer to a controlled storm than a coordinated operation. The mechanics, engineers, and data analysts are working at an almost frantic pace to make sure every element of the RB car is adapted to Hamilton's needs, and the urgency is palpable. Simulator crews are running non-stop sessions, reprogramming complex setups to match the micro-adjustments that Hamilton requires in corner entry, throttle response, and braking balance. Ergonomics teams are redesigning cockpit layouts to align with his precise seating position, steering feel, and preferred button configurations, knowing that even the slightest discomfort could affect his ability to extract performance. The telemetry department has been tasked with ensuring data can flow in both directions, between Verstappen and Hamilton, yet that seemingly technical matter has already become the core of a brewing internal conflict. Verstappen's circle is deeply cautious, bordering on resistant, to the idea of granting Hamilton unrestricted access to every trace file, every tire degradation model, and every setup adjustment. They fear what many in the paddock already suspect, that Hamilton's greatest strength is not raw speed alone, but his ability to analyze, adapt, and exploit information faster than almost anyone else in history. With full visibility into Verstappen's data, Hamilton could potentially replicate his rival's strengths while simultaneously exposing his weaknesses, shortening any adjustment period and erasing the advantage Verstappen's camp worked years to build. Hamilton, however, has drawn a line in the sand from the very beginning. In early internal meetings, he reportedly made it clear he will not tolerate a scenario where he is treated as anything less than an equal. His demand is simple but uncompromising. If Red Bull wants him, it must be under the condition that transparency runs both ways, and any suggestion of hierarchy will be met with resistance. This insistence has already created a tense atmosphere in strategy rooms, where senior Red Bull figures, tasked with managing two of the most formidable egos in Formula One, are desperately searching for a way to keep harmony while still extracting peak performance from both. The challenge extends far beyond the technical. The financial repercussions of Hamilton's arrival are immense, reshaping Red Bull's commercial landscape almost overnight. Some sponsors who had quietly distanced themselves during the turbulence surrounding Christian Horner's controversies have been reinvigorated by the sheer marketing force of placing Hamilton and Verstappen under the same roof. Contracts that had been stagnating are suddenly being renegotiated on far more ambitious terms. Global brands are queuing to expand their presence, and new partners who had long coveted a tie to Formula One are now competing to be associated with what many are already calling the most star-studded garage in the sport's history. The commercial rights holders of Formula One are practically celebrating in private, knowing full well that the rivalry between Hamilton and Verstappen will become a global phenomenon. Television networks are predicting record audiences not only for the marquee races such as Silverstone and Monaco, but even for circuits that usually struggle for viewership, since the mere presence of this dynamic guarantees drama. Social media metrics are already spiking, with every rumor, every leaked quote, every speculative headline generating viral traction in ways the sport has rarely experienced before. But the enthusiasm is not universal. Rival team principals are already voicing their unease, aware that the consolidation of so much talent in one team threatens to unbalance the competitive spirit of the grid. McLaren's Zak Brown, never shy about speaking candidly, has warned that Formula One risks undermining its own parity by allowing two megastars to coexist in the same garage, suggesting that the long-term health of the sport depends on competitive distribution of talent. Aston Martin's Mike Crack has echoed similar concerns, questioning whether Red Bull's strategy will backfire by destabilizing the team internally, no matter how strong the car may be. The fear across the paddock is that Hamilton and Verstappen will not simply coexist. They will ignite a rivalry so combustible that it consumes everything around them, fracturing Red Bull's carefully constructed empire from within. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, small details hint at the storm that is brewing. Engineers whisper about subtle disagreements during simulator runs, about Hamilton challenging established procedures, about Verstappen quietly questioning the decision-making hierarchy. Senior figures in Milton Keynes find themselves holding emergency meetings late into the night, weighing whether their greatest triumph in securing the two biggest names in the sport could also become their most dangerous gamble. For now, the public narrative is one of celebration. Two legends united under one roof, the ultimate pairing of talent and ambition. But beneath the surface, the reality is far more volatile, with every detail carrying the potential to spark a confrontation that could either elevate Red Bull to untouchable levels of dominance or plunge them into chaos unprecedented in the sport's modern history. The reaction across the world of Formula One is nothing short of volcanic. Supporters, journalists, and former drivers alike are struggling to process the sheer audacity of what has just happened. Fans find themselves ripped in two directions, their emotions scattered in every possible extreme. On one side are those who cannot hide their exhilaration, convinced that bringing together Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen inside the same team will create the fiercest, most compelling rivalry the sport has ever staged. They imagine qualifying sessions where every fraction of a second matters, races where egos collide at 200 miles per hour, and a championship battle so ruthless it will be remembered as the pinnacle of Formula One drama. These fans see it as a golden gift, the sport's greatest champion and its current unstoppable force locked into a single garage, sharing strategy meetings, fighting for supremacy lap after lap, wheel to wheel. But for every voice of excitement, there is another voice drenched in worry, warning of chaos and destruction. Skeptics argue that two alpha drivers, both relentless in their pursuit of dominance, cannot coexist under one roof without disaster. They imagine vicious clashes in debriefs, broken alliances in the pit lane, and inevitable crashes on the track that could cost Red Bull everything. They predict fractures running deep through the team, mechanics forced to pick sides, engineers whispering their frustrations, and a once-united operation splitting in half under the weight of two giants unwilling to compromise. Social media has become a battlefield of opinion, with hashtags trending worldwide, every comment thread overflowing with heated debates. Memes, speculation, and conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. Some fans insist Hamilton orchestrated the move to prove his superiority once and for all. Others claim Verstappen pushed for it to validate his dominance against the only rival who has truly tested him. Entire fan bases are launching digital wars, Mercedes loyalists furious at what they see as betrayal, Ferrari supporters reeling from yet another cruel twist, and Red Bull followers caught between excitement for glory and fear of internal collapse. The online discourse has turned Formula One into a global soap opera, where every rumor, every leaked radio message, every glance between Hamilton and Verstappen is dissected, magnified, and spun into a new narrative. The decision itself feels almost impossible to comprehend. Lewis Hamilton, the seven-time world champion, the man synonymous with Mercedes' golden dynasty, the figure once hailed as Ferrari's savior, has chosen Red Bull. In a single stroke, he has shattered the expectations of millions, betrayed long-standing relationships, and rewritten his story yet again. For Toto Wolff, the move is nothing short of infuriating. The man who built an empire alongside Hamilton, who celebrated championships and weathered heartbreak at his side, now watches him walk away into the arms of his fiercest rivals. For Ferrari, the sting cuts just as deep. They believed they had been betrayed once, but this latest twist leaves them humiliated, abandoned, and scrambling to recover their pride. Inside the paddock, tension is reaching boiling point. Rival team principals trade sharp remarks behind closed doors, their strategies for the future reshaped overnight by a transfer that feels more like a coup. Drivers whisper about the madness of facing Hamilton and Verstappen as teammates, imagining what it means for every start, every pit stop, every overtaking attempt. The entire grid braces itself for an unprecedented showdown, knowing that the balance of power has shifted in a way nobody could have planned for. The pairing of Hamilton and Verstappen is more than just a driver lineup, it is a ticking time bomb. Every session will be a battle, every result a statement, every word exchanged in the media a spark on a trail of gasoline. Red Bull has invited chaos, and in doing so, has guaranteed that the coming season will be unlike any in history. The fireworks will be relentless, the storylines impossible to predict, and the sport itself transformed by the gravitational pull of two titans locked in combat beneath the same banner. What lies ahead is uncertain, but one truth is undeniable. Formula One has just stepped into a new era, one that promises not only speed and spectacle but also betrayal, rivalry, and an intensity that will consume the sport from within. The world will not look away, because with Hamilton and Verstappen bound together in this uneasy alliance, every race will feel like the edge of a cliff, every weekend a fight for survival, and every lap a chapter in a story that will define the legacy of Formula One for generations to come.